quiet scare, where the whispers are getting louder during the day. It's interesting. I just sort of love this particular feeling, that anticipation you get from a story that really happened, or I guess that someone claims really happened. While the channel is best known for its sleep-friendly horror, the current collection is better suited for an active, daylight listen. This series offers intense tales of the unknown, encounters with big things in the woods, strange returns, and moments of total loss in places that felt safe. They capture that unsettling cold certainty that sets in when the world suddenly shows you something huge that just doesn't belong. That nearness to the normal is the real hook. It's easy to spot these episodes. You'll see a sun icon on the thumbnail image, and the title will clearly say "Not for Sleep" or "No Sleep." The quiet in the day is not empty. I didn't leave because I was brave. I left because I had run out of excuses. I threw 2 trash bags of clothes in my trunk and drove north before the sun could scald my resolve. I picked a small lake town off a postcard and an old glove box map. The water looked clean from a distance. The houses sat far apart. Distance felt like a lock I could afford. I found a cheap cabin, 1 bedroom, thin walls, a short dock that creaked when wind pushed across the lake. I paid cash and signed the receipt as M. Carter because my hand shook if I wrote the full name I had married into. The owner didn't look up. He told me to pull the dock ladder out at first frost. He said the ice catches it and tears the wood. It sounded like he says it every fall. I bought groceries at the hardware store. The cashier watched me count singles and said nothing. I put toothpaste and floss on the counter with canned soup. I wanted to look like someone with a plan. I made a to-do list that first afternoon. Call dentist, change mailing address, walk every morning. I wrote walk twice by mistake. I crossed off call dentist after 30 minutes on hold and 2 menus. I hung up when the recording said the wait was 40 minutes. I told myself I'd call tomorrow. I didn't build a new life there. I hid. I kept the porch light on even in daylight. I slept in a hoodie with the hood up. I kept my phone on silent, screen down, but never let the battery die. I watched the lake through the front window like it was a hallway someone could use against me. My only rule was simple. If a car pulled in, I would go out the back and straight to the neighbors. He had never hit my face. He pushed me into door frames. He squeezed my shoulders until they bruised under a sweater. He called every 10 minutes when I ran to the store. He moved my wallet and made me late, then asked why I didn't respect time. He took my keys while I showered and put them back 5 minutes before I had to leave. When he did grab my jaw once, he apologized before his fingers left my skin. He bought a little kitchen plant. He watered it daily until it rotted in a month. He said the plant was ungrateful. The first week at the lake felt like learning to breathe through a door. The wind shifted and the air tasted clean. Boats moved slow in the middle distance. Morning put a gray band on the water that turned silver by noon. Even when it looked calm, drift worked under the surface. Still water only means you don't see the force yet. I walked at sunrise, early enough to be alone. I stayed near the edge of the road and counted driveways. 15 houses looked occupied year-round. If the mailboxes were honest, the rest waited for July. I mapped 2 side paths, one to a ranger station with a locked door, one to a bait shop that sold coffee and beer. I didn't go inside either. On day 4, my phone lit up with his name while I tightened the cold water handle. The call ended after 2 rings. A text came through, "Call me." Then another, "Where are you?" No question mark. I set the phone down slowly. Old habits die last. I switched it off and put it in the freezer because I had read that somewhere. Then I took it out because I didn't want it near my food. I put it in the toolbox under the sink and closed the cabinet. At night, the lake made small sounds. Wood expanding, water tapping under the dock. Sometimes a soft thump. I told myself it was a loose board or a fish. I checked both doors twice before bed, and once at midnight. The porch bulb burned out on day 6. I replaced it and kept the old one in a bowl. Throwing it out felt final. On day 7, I found prints in the wet dirt by the dock ladder. Not boots, not barefoot. narrow and long, turned slightly like someone had stepped down sideways and held the rail, deeper at the toe than the heel. Kids around the lake wear sandals. These weren't sandals. The sun warmed the spot and the edges blurred as I stared. I didn't take a photo. I told myself the marks were old. That night, the bathroom door swelled in the frame and stuck for a second. The next night, the hallway light blinked out when I hit the midpoint, and cracked back on. I held still and listened for breathing. That wasn't mine. The refrigerator kicked on. I didn't laugh. The sound didn't find a way out. I kept noticing prints after light rain. The same angle at the ladder. The same depth in the toe. No tracks leading to the yard. None away. Just a few steps down to the ladder. Never up. I thought about chalk. I thought about the ranger station. I thought about asking at the bait shop if kids cut through. I did nothing. I scrubbed the dock with a stiff brush instead. By day 10, I had a system. Check the ladder at dawn. Check the doors at dusk. Hammer by the bed at night. He stopped texting after 3 tries. Silence spread out in the day and pressed in at night. The mail came and I stacked the envelopes in a plastic bin. The third one from the bank was thick. I put it under the others and didn't open any of them. A week later, I went out to pull the ladder up, the way the owner had shown me. The metal felt cold and wet. It stuck, then released with a shudder through my arms. Something pale moved near my hand and slid under the dock. I froze. My body said fish. My head didn't agree. I didn't lean over. I secured the pin with shaking fingers and stood too fast. My vision narrowed. The dock pitched. I widened my stance and waited until the edges came back. I walked into the house slowly, picked up the hammer, and sat with it for an hour. After that, I didn't step onto the dock alone. I watched the ladder spot from the window. The water there rippled longer than the wind explained. I told myself the metal had held a little heat and made tiny currents. I repeated it until the words lost shape. On the 19th day, the thump under the dock was not small. It traveled up through the wood and into my feet. I stepped back from the window. The water pushed against the bank in a short, tight wave. Nothing broke the surface. The porch light flicked and went black even though it was daytime. That switch flipping off hit hard. I stood still and said my name under my breath. I called the sheriff. I didn't say prince or pale shape. I said, someone keeps coming down to my dock at night. I said, I'm alone here. A deputy came out. He asked me to repeat the story in smaller pieces. He wrote things down without looking at my face for long. He stood at the edge of the water and squinted at the ladder brackets. He told me to get a motion light. He handed me a card and said they'd swing by more often. Something shifted after his visit. The lake felt less empty and not in a good way. That night I slept in 10-minute slices. When I did drop, I heard the thump in a dream and woke with my hands open, like I'd been holding something and lost it. A steady rain came the next day. The surface dulled to a single dark sheet. At noon, a small fishing boat sat near the middle, with 2 men hunched in it. They stayed as the rain soaked their necks. The boat bobbed, then jerked. The line had snagged. The man at the bow braced with his legs wide. The one at the stern leaned over with a long pole and prodded near the snag. He stopped moving. The bowman pulled with both hands on his back. The boat shifted toward the snag. A neighbor jogged to his dock and waved. The men kept working. The bowman bent at an angle that said the line had stopped being a thing and started being a boundary. He reeled fast. He stopped dead and looked back. The man with the pole lifted it and dropped it into the boat so it wouldn't fall into the water. That told me enough. Someone called the sheriff before I could back. The deputy returned with 2 others. Please keep back. We have it under control. Boats spread out, then tightened toward a point off my dock. Men leaned over the surface with heads and hands arranged the way you see on television. Up close, it was quiet and halting. Rope slipped, hooks caught nothing, sleeves soaked. No one watched the sky. Eyes held the water in their own hands. They brought her up near dusk. The light had gone flat and the rain thinned to mist. Hair surfaced first, long. The color water gives everything it keeps too long. They moved her to the neighbor's dock aligned with my ladder brackets. I stood 3 steps back from my window so I wouldn't be visible. I focused on breathing and lost track of it until my chest hurt. They worked with practiced hands. No names. No one knew yet. They covered what they could. They called the coroner. Their voices stayed low and practical. The deputy looked at my window once and didn't raise a hand. I didn't either. Forensics came the next morning. Not many. The lake isn't a lab. One of them asked to see my doc. He looked at the brackets and asked how long I'd been there. A few weeks. He said water preserves some things and eats others. He said sometimes a body slips under something heavy and stays where it shouldn't. He didn't add the part about a line catching he didn't have. A local dentist had moved to digital last year. The deputy told me that on his break 3 days later, leaning on my porch rail and looking at the lake without stepping closer to my door, they matched her to stored films. He said her teeth were in good shape. He said flossing matters, and pressed his lips like he wished he hadn't tried for small talk on top of that. They released her name the following week. I didn't say it out loud. She had lived on the far side of the lake for a year. People remembered a dog that ran the shore, a blue raincoat on a hook, a man who shouted at a gas pump and slapped his own car when the nozzle clicked off. People remembered calls to the house and a broken porch step. No one remembered her at the bait shop more than once. A missing person report existed somewhere else. The paper used disappearance like a soft cloth over a hard edge. The deputy said they had a suspect. He said suspect like it might crack. He said the man's name without a title. He said the man had a history with her. Words like domestic and prior landed hard and steady. The man was already in custody on another charge. Eventual conviction, the deputy said. Like a destination on a map someone else would drive to. Months slid by. The lake went to glass, then white, then gray again. Summer boats returned and stitched the surface, then smoothed it. My ladder brackets rusted a thin edge where the pin rubbed. I replaced the porch bulb twice. I threw the first dead bulb away. I kept the second one in the bowl and couldn't explain why. I heard later she had visited a clinic twice with bruises. She called falls. A tooth had cracked from clenching. The dentist had fixed it and saved the x-ray. Images keep what we tell them to keep. The coroner said the water had preserved enough for a match. I pictured a tech opening a file and feeling the cold click of knowing. Not relief, just an end to not knowing. By December, I slept through the night again. I stopped checking the ladder when the lake froze. When it thawed, I stood at the window and waited for a thump that didn't come. It didn't have to. The dock had already delivered. I moved through the cabin with air that didn't press on me. I installed a motion light wrong, watched a video and fixed it. I planted basil in the kitchen window. It grew, flowered, and collapsed in a week. I threw it out and didn't replace it. The trial happened in spring. The paper said convicted in a bold font that looked wrong under that word. I didn't go. I didn't stream it. I didn't say his name when I read it. I sat on the porch and looked at water that held a blank face. If you want to know whether pulling her up changed anything, I can only say what changed here. The print stopped. The ladder hung clean. The dock stayed quiet at night. My phone stayed in a drawer. When I took it out, there were no new messages. Silence returned to being an absence, not a threat. I moved in June. I left the keys on the counter and called the owner. I said the ladder pin needed replacing. He said he'd take care of it. He didn't ask if I enjoyed the place. I didn't tell him the lake had held a woman for longer than anyone should be held, and then let her go in a way that gave her a name again. I didn't say the thumps had trained me to act when sound came. On my last morning, I stood at the edge of the dock where the ladder had been that first week. I looked down. The water held the sky in my face until wind wrinkled. Both I didn't speak. I didn't say goodbye. I drove away and checked the rearview mirror once. I know which looks make you swerve. I know which sounds need an answer. Bone keeps, names keep, small habits keep you alive. Nature holds secrets until it refuses to keep them another minute. That's what the lake did. That's what I can say that is true. Tonight, my new place is quiet, in an ordinary way. The only thump is my neighbor's trash can on the curb. I stand at my window and watch the street. The motion light clicks on because I installed it right. I sleep without water in my head. The file exists at the courthouse. Her headstone carries a name you can say out loud. I lock my door and breathe.